So tonight I'm going to take you on my completely aimless and purposeless walk, which I had no intention of doing, or at least recording, because it's about an hour before sunset, before dusk maybe. There's not a lot of light left. I was going to come for a walk, just to sneak in like maybe an hour of a walk before it gets dark, and that's all I planned on doing. But as I sat in the car and decided what to do, I just thought, well, let me just strap the camera to my head and talk. Might as well. But I have probably the least idea, least intention in my head about what we're going to talk about today, but I think that makes it even more fun. I'm just going to play it by ear. I may say nothing, something, I don't know. At this point, I don't know if it matters, but we'll give it a shot. So we're here walking. It's what is it? Mid-70s maybe, but it's very muggy. It rained a lot today. The sky is, well, you can see mostly overcast. A few glimpses of sunlight, but not really any blue sky. So a good day for the plants and animals. There's all sorts of bunnies running around in front of me. But for the humans, for the most part, I stayed inside all day and worked. I got a lot of work done, which is good. But you know, after a day of working like this, my brain feels a bit fried from the mechanical patterns, you know, that I go through during a normal work day like this. And it's hard to even detach from that, or disengage is the word I was looking for. Which, you know, I've noticed just watching my own brain, right, how it works or how it responds. And I know the patterns. You know, I know that when I use it a lot, like today, it kind of wears down. It needs a reset. Sleep usually fixes it. You know, but it gets real muddled and sort of confused. You know, because there's so many ideas floating through. It's like you know, you've charged it up to use it, and then it takes a while. Like it's like a decay time to kind of get back down to a normal state, which is really where I prefer to be, sort of that low energy, thoughtless state that's just observing and paying attention. Not this high energy sort of thinking state, but everything is as it should be. I also did not put any mosquito lotion on today, so I just hope the bugs don't spot me and alert all their friends, because I'd be a prime target for blood consumption tonight. And it's probably a perfect night for it too, because it's damp and the right temperature. And alright, well, spending all this time just kind of gabbing about the conditions leading up to this, and not so much about what's actually going on. Maybe that's for the best. Don't need to use words if the words don't come. I anticipate this will be a very slow video. Very, you know, just meander my way through here, record what I record, and then we'll move on to another day. This day's coming to a close. I don't really stay awake these days much longer than when after the sun sets. You know, I love getting up with the sunrise, or even before, very early in the morning. I used to like to stay awake late at night, you know, go out for night walks. And on certain nights, I still like doing that. But lately, it hasn't been like that so much. And I think part of the reason is I've been sort of taking care of my oldest dog, Sandy, who probably doesn't have much more time to live. And I sleep with her on the floor every night. And I kind of like being home, you know, when it's dark, so I can eat, wrap up my day, and then spend my time with her throughout the night. She's doing pretty well at the moment. We got her heart medicine adjusted a little, and she gets these shots for pain, and it's been working pretty well. I would say several weeks ago, maybe at this point, I don't know, maybe it was a month and a half ago, I don't know. She really went downhill. We kind of thought it was the end at that point, but I think because of all of the attention we've given her and the care we've given her and the change in her medicine, she's bounced back kind of to where she was before she had this episode, which is sort of like a seizure, but more than likely related to her heart. And she's been doing fairly well since then. So just take it day by day, you know. Whatever's happening, we just let it happen. And I just want to make sure that every day she feels appreciated and still has a reason to be alive, even if she can't do that much. You know, her legs hurt. She has arthritis. It's hard for her to walk. She really doesn't even like going out in the yard as much anymore. The backyard, she goes out to use the bathroom and then kind of comes right back in, which is kind of sad because I would love to take her out for walks with me here. If she was able to do it, I would have her here no problem. I had my other dog, Coco, chocolate lab, who passed away a few years ago in 2023. He was my hiking partner. If he was still alive today, he would be here on these walks with me, no doubt. It will be travels with Charlie and Coco. But that is not how it came to pass. So, yeah, this is just a lot of memories popping up today. Not really sort of paying attention, feeling kind of distracted today. But I always think it's important to watch the mind, watch what the brain's doing regardless of what the brain's doing. On a day when the brain is distracted, notice that it's distracted. Right? On a day when it's difficult to pay attention, notice that. Right? Whatever the state is, don't ever try to make it something be something that it isn't. Just pay attention to what is happening as it's happening, regardless of it. Right? That's sort of the beauty of it all. Is there's nothing you're trying to do other than observe, you know, the nature and structure of thought as it's occurring to you in all of its ways, natural ways. So that's what I'm even doing tonight. These memories are popping up and I'm describing them. And not much more than that. It's so important to pay attention. I mean, I'm going to say this a million times because there really is nothing else to say. And it's all there is. And it may sound boring and redundant, but that's because this isn't meant to be exciting. This is meant to be whatever it is. Serious, I guess you could say. Um, a lot of black-eyed Susans here, the flowers. I sort of like recording what my brain is doing regardless of what it's doing. Right? No preconceived notion of, today I'm going to do this or tomorrow I'm going to do that. It just turn on the camera and start recording whatever brain activity is occurring. So tonight it brought me up here to my favorite spot to just sit, and hopefully the mosquitoes stay away. It's quiet. Well, it's quiet in one way and it's not in another. I mean, there's this symphony of birds, insect sounds, all different kinds I can hear that I can't identify all of them, but it's just a mixture, a blending of all these sounds. And I can smell like whatever the flowers or weeds or whatever. It's not just grass. There's like another smell, plant life smell. I even hear a jet way up in the sky. I don't know if you can hear that. And I hear some people talking off to my left. I can feel the chair, under me. And of course, these are just word descriptions of what's happening, right? Not the actual sensations, but it's all happening, right? It's all happening right now. And we can pay attention to it without describing it. So not what I'm doing, just using words to just kind of like cover the bases. It just shows sort of an example of like things that are happening, but formulating these words is not the point. It's not to describe in words what's happening. It's just to pay attention to these things that the words are describing, not the words themselves, not the description. Just pay attention. I titled the last video that I recorded at Jordan Creek yesterday morning to be just pay attention, because I couldn't remember even everything that we talked about. I mean, I know we talked about technology and even social media and problems with society and getting to the root of it all as usual. But then I just thought, why overcomplicate it? The solution, I guess, as it always is to pay attention to these problems, pay attention to what's happening always and completely, and whatever comes from that comes from that. Not pay attention and then do something, or pay attention and, with some objective. Just pay attention and you'll observe, you'll learn what you need to learn, and that'll be it. I'm a bit tired tonight, as you can probably tell. If these videos didn't already put you to sleep, they certainly will now. With me yawning and talking so sedately, if that's even a word, sedatedly. Maybe we'll just silently pay attention for a while. That would be a change, wouldn't it? not to break the silence, but I feel this little ant crawling on my leg. I'm trying to peacefully extricate without hurting him. I could feel it. It's also interesting when you're just sort of quiet and you're paying attention, you can feel little things like an ant walking on your leg, right? Sensitive. That's a word I don't know if I've used. Okay, I got him on my finger. Now can I get him down? Get him on a leaf. And then from there, where'd he go? Oh, here he is. Get him on the leaf and then I can get him to safety. He doesn't know what I'm doing right now. He's panicking. Come on. Trying to get you safely off of me because I'm not a safe place to be. All right, I got him. Sensitive. I think that's a word. Maybe we'll go into that just a tiny bit here after being quiet for a while. Being sensitive is very important. Well, let's start walking now that we've got our word. What does sensitive mean? Sensitive is a good word because it's derived from senses, right? But we also, to be sensitive means to be really, I think, aware of your senses. Aware of what's happening, but in maybe a more acute way than normal. I mean, we can always kind of be crudely aware of what's happening, our smell and taste, all these things I just mentioned, rattle off a few words and be done with it. But to really be sensitive, I think, means to be really in tune with your senses, like crank up the amplitude, I don't want to say amplification, but it is almost like an amplification, you may be getting a signal, but you're not really, that's interesting, because paying attention is almost like an amplifier. I didn't think of it that way before, but it sort of takes what's there, and when you're aware and paying attention, it sort of raises the level to your awareness. Right, so when you're paying attention, it's like you're hearing more, seeing more, feeling more, or maybe not more, just it's there. You're just not, the signals are just coming in, but they're not really going anywhere. And to be sensitive, right, it can be used in many ways. It can also be used, the reason I said it's a good word, it can be used sort of emotionally, like you're sensitive to another's feelings, right? When you're a sensitive person, you're someone who is not callous, not cold. Sensitive is like to have empathy, to be aware of what someone is feeling and to be sensitive to their feelings. So it's got that usage as well. It's maybe a more interesting word than I initially thought. So it can refer to your physical senses. It can also refer to your emotional sensitivity. And really, in a lot of ways, almost is just very much related to this paying attention that I talked about. That when you pay attention, you're sensitive. And when you're sensitive, you're paying attention. So there is sort of an equivalency there, I think, with the word. But what's nice about it is it says, what should you be paying attention to? Not that attention has an object, but the only way we really can pay attention is through our senses. And to be sensitive is not to focus on one thing, like your sight, but all your senses. Can we pay attention with all of our senses? And that's a holistic way of paying attention, of being sensitive. And what does it mean to pay attention with all your senses, right, as opposed to just one? And it's worth examining that, to see what do we mean by that, because one's first reaction might be, well, I can only pay attention to one thing at a time. right? I think most people would say that. You know, whether if I'm looking at something intently, then I can't be listening to something intently at the same time. The two would conflict each other. But that's confusing concentration with attention. Where concentration is that focusing on one thing while simultaneously blocking out everything else. So that's why if you were focusing on what you're seeing, then that's it. You're not hearing, feeling, like everything else is getting blocked out. And that's certainly not what we're saying. We've discussed this before. But it's worth thinking about, I guess, to use the word thinking, or considering, mulling over. Is it possible to be aware of everything at the same time without focusing attention on any one thing? What I think is interesting about that is using our normal mode of thinking, no. But I think we can all safely say that the way we conduct ourselves now throughout every day is that we're usually focusing on one thing at a time, because thought focuses, thought pays attention to one or two things or whatever it is. So this is about almost, is there a different mode of the brain operating than the classic thought-based mode? And when you think about it, again, we're thinking, but maybe that's our biggest problem here. Not just being sensitive and aware, but I am also aware of what's happening. Maybe not that intently, but I'm hearing things, paying attention. This is a very enjoyable walk, whether I'm talking or not. But I guess what I'm thinking is all your sense organs are all connected to your brain, right? At once. I mean, all your nervous system. We'll get a little scientific here. Branches out to every sense that you have, and it's always receiving information on all of those nerves all the time, right? It doesn't turn one off. So it's all coming in to the brain. We're just filtering it, right? There's like a layer there, a filter that your brain applies that somehow says, yes, I'm receiving information on all the senses all the time. It's all coming into the brain. But I'm going to pick one of those senses out at a time to pay attention. And maybe that's how things get recorded also in that way. Like maybe that somehow selects what memory chooses to store. Although memory can contain multiple sensory inputs, I don't think, but a lot of times it is either visual or smell or hearing, auditory, maybe some combination of both or multiple. But I guess what's interesting is, can the brain be in a mode where it's receiving information from all the senses equally, not preferentially, holistically, as we've used that word before to mean the whole, and just be aware of that sensory input, that live sensory input that's occurring in every moment, in its complete wholeness. Without all these thoughts interfering with that, without the center, the self, the bundle of memories that we have coming into play and interfering with that process and saying, you should be focusing on this or that or some other thing. So, again, just a question, right? No answer, because there is no answer. It's something you investigate on your own through your awareness, your sensitivity, and asking questions like, am I sensitive? Right? Questions have power, that when you ask a question without jumping to a conclusion, That's how you learn. Inquiry, going into that question. So a good question to ask yourself is, can I be aware of everything? Can I be aware of, or maybe a better way of putting it is sort of in the negative, can I not be focused on one thing? And if I'm not focused on one thing, does that mean that I'm aware of everything? Because now I'm not picking and choosing. And what does it mean to be aware in that way of everything that's happening? I think when we settle down to thinking, right, that gets in the way of this whole awareness of everything. Otherwise, we would just be taking in data, taking in sensory input, which is what's true, right? What's happening right now, which we've referred to as the truth multiple times. What's happening right now is my senses are receiving input. That's happening now. It's the only way I know of the world. I only know of the world through my senses. There's no other way. To directly perceive what's happening. And I think a lot of times when we reflect on something, the brain might be recording things like the sounds, the sights, the smells, but not paying attention to it, but just recording it, right? And then for later review. And maybe this is also what comes out during our dreams. There's a lot of information that's recorded that isn't processed, just recorded in our subconscious mind, you might say. And maybe that's the idea, that the subconscious mind are those things we're just not aware of, paying attention to. We're paying attention to one thing, like I'm paying attention to sight or sound, but the information is being recorded for later review and processing, right? It comes out at night when we dream, the things we didn't pay attention to. So a lot of times when you think about what dreams are, right, it does seem to be there was more going on than you were able to pay attention to during your day. And at night, it's sort of processing, that residually stored memory, maybe. And that's to watch that, which I think we can also say, if we were paying attention holistically during the day to everything happening, not focusing on one thing, dreams probably would be unnecessary, because you're processing it all in some way while you're awake, and there wouldn't be a need for dreams to come in and sort of clear out the garbage, take out the garbage, which I think is what dreams do, sort through and say, was anything useful? If it was, we'll record that again, and if it wasn't useful, you just let it go. It seems to be a filtering process, right? Dreams seem to be filtering through all of what was stored to see what was valuable and what was not. Maybe making associations between things that came up, all this information that came up, and then your brain wants to see patterns, associate that information with past patterns, and I think that's what brings up the images, that we have, which are memories that are triggered by whatever our senses took in, This is what I feel and see. And I do know, just as far as the brain goes, that a lot of times when I'm stuck on a problem, here's something coming, it sounded like the cart. When I'm stuck on a problem, sometimes the best thing I have found is not to continue probing and poking at that problem, but to just let it marinate overnight while I'm sleeping, and then sometimes I wake up in the morning and I have the solution. That's happened to me more times than I can count for my technical work. I'm just like, nope, it's time for my brain to just, operate on that. right? Not in a conscious way. And this is why I think it's very important. I think sometimes the biggest sort of discoveries I've had, or breakthroughs, or whatever you want to call them, in my work, have not been because I follow some prescriptive path and method to the solution, but because I have allowed my brain to do its thing without me interfering. There's more power to the brain when it operates holistically, and I think that means just not directing it in any particular way. And in our waking world, when we're trying to actively solve a problem, we're searching for paths, and we're trying to analyze what's happening one path at a time, and it just gets exhaustive versus just like stepping away from it. The brain has all that information and it just figures it out. That's another really important, like, I've experienced that many times, and I have always kind of just chalked that up to the brain operating as a whole rather than the parts of my brain trying to attack the problem individually. So even before I knew any of what Krishnamurti talked about or anything else, really, it was just my own awareness of how this brain, I say my brain, but this brain operates. And I think I always recommend that to people, who are, trying to solve a problem. And check what time dusk is here, because that little thing's running around here. 9:03 is last light, so that is, I think I'm going to cut across the grass and head towards the parking lot. So, I mean, these are just observations, right? Observations of my own brain, but still limited observations, right? These are not like vast insights, but they're just glimpses of sort of how the brain works. But it does hint at the brain can operate in different ways that are not just directed by our conscious thought, our will, and if you let the brain sort of be in these different states, then it can do some interesting things. And I think, in a lot of ways, this is that intelligence that I'm always talking about that goes beyond just limited human intelligence, which is just this accumulation of knowledge and rearranging all that knowledge to come up with, new ideas, not really new, right? Just restructured and reformulated past ideas. But even so, like, just letting the brain be. Don't force it. Don't try to make it do, because who's doing the trying? Who's doing the forcing? It's just some small part of your brain trying to gain control over the whole brain, which can't really happen. So just let the brain be in this holistic way of thinking, and things will happen, right? Things will happen. This is our fear, I think, is that if we're not controlling something, things won't happen, right? And that is just not even true. Things will happen even when you're not controlling. How do you know? Stop controlling for a while. Stop trying to be that controller. Stop trying to make things happen. Stop with the incessant planning and all that, and just see that things are happening anyways. Things are happening without your interference. And watch what's happening in that state of being, or in that state of mind, and observe it. Because it is just like watching a flower bloom or something. It's going to happen its own inherent way. And then what you see is, wow, things can happen without me feeling like I need to be in control. Things happen anyways. What is going on there, right? I thought I had to be the controller all the time. I thought I had to control everything. Be at the helm and be at the, the conductor of the orchestra. And it just turns out that it's happening anyways. And I'm just kind of observing what's happening, right? And so in some way, get rid of the illusion of control, because you're not really controlling. It's not even like step back and don't be the controller, you're not even the controller now. That's the point. If you're more aware of what your brain is doing, you'll realize there is no control over it. That is, we've talked about this before, your brain just kind of comes up with stories that you're the controller. After the fact explanations for what happened anyways. And this is kind of heavy stuff, right? To just think, wait a second, so things are happening anyways. Decisions are, like, I'm not really making decisions. Things are happening. After the fact, I have this, the brain fills in the gaps and tries to make me think I made the decision. But it's just kind of happening anyway. But if you just don't get caught in that illusion and let things happen, watch the things that are happening, there's a whole new, something new happens, right? Something new opens up. This release from this sense that you always do have to be the controller, controlling things. It's not necessary. Don't have to. And in a way, then you're not stressed out anymore about like trying to be that controller, because otherwise you're like, God, I got so much that I have to do, and I have to, I have all these decisions to make, blah, 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 and you feel overwhelmed with stress and anxiety. When you can just let that go, be on autopilot in some way, and then just kind of enjoy the ride, right? Not feel like, watch what's happening, but not like feel the stress of being the one who must control. So anyways, maybe not the greatest ever conversations, but we just kind of tiptoed around some things, but just, again, just paying attention to what our brain's doing. And now I'm gonna call it a night, because it is within a few minutes of closing time here. So I will say goodbye. Suggest that you watch your mind and maybe mull over some of the things I said. But more importantly than that, just watch your own mind. Don't let me tell you what's happening in your own mind. Why do you need me? I don't need anyone to tell me what's happening in my own mind. I can see it, right? So just be aware of that. Pay attention. Have that insight that you can watch your own mind and learn more from that than anyone can ever tell you. So, all right, we'll end it there, and good night.